Every year, a team from the Lyndon United Methodist Church goes to Guatemala to stay and work for a week at an orphanage. News 7 reporter Rebecca Reese and photographer Jessica Goldbrand reported on their preparations last month.
The Guatemala trip coincided with Lyndon State College's winter break. The church invited Rebecca and Jessica to travel with them and offered to raise money for their airfare and some of their expenses. The electronic journalism students decided to take a, quote, businessman's holiday, unquote, and accepted the church's offer. Tonight, they began a series of video postcards they filmed on their winter break.
A bus ride, 2 plane rides, to going through customs.
To Monjas, Guatemala, to volunteer our services at an orphanage called Shadow of His Wings.
Shadow of His Wings is home to over 70 kids coming from tough situations and the destination of the Lyndon United Methodist Church's annual mission trip. They unpacked their bags and set out to do good, even if the tasks weren't the most enjoyable.
We had to dig some ditches and move some dirt and help with some irrigation systems for the projects to water fruit trees and stuff. And we also go out into the community in the dump and volunteer and bring food baskets and share the word of God with the people.
Overflow her with joy.
Most on the trip could agree being with the children at the orphanage was one of the best parts.
How do you say? Mandy, how do you say one?
Interacting with the kids is just, the love that they show you is definitely the most rewarding part of this trip.
These children are escaping poverty, abuse, and trafficking, and now live in a safe place that the team helps provide.
Let them know that people care about them, and that even though life is hard, we can still get through it.
I just don't know where they find all the joy.
While the Methodist Church organizes the trip, people of all denominations attend. A religious background is not required.
The time I came down, I had no relationship with Christ. I was new to the concept of God and the Holy Spirit, and like I said, these kids opened my eyes to what is really important.
I don't want to lose this feeling that is here, that we get from spending time with the kids and blessing them and doing God's work, and just, it's going to be hard.
Though it's only a week or 10 days out of our life, it impacts their life forever.
And leaves lasting impressions on those from the Northeast Kingdom who travel here. Rebecca Reese, News 7, Monjas, Jalapa, Guatemala.
The missionaries returned home last Monday, March 6th. Tomorrow night, Rebecca and Jessica's winter working vacation video postcard will outline how that Guatemalan orphanage was established, thanks to one Northeast Kingdom woman and her Mountain Inn co-founder.
The Guatemala orphanage the Guatemala orphanage that members of the Lyndon United Methodist Church visit each year exists in part because of a woman from Sheffield, Vermont. 15 years after the Shadow of His Wings orphanage got started, Joanne Simpson is no longer in Guatemala with the organization, or in the Northeast Kingdom for that matter. But Simpson's partner in the creation, Carol Bishop from Montana, is still there. Tonight, News 7 reporter Rebecca Reese and photographer Jessica Goldbrand introduce us to Mama Carol and one of the young women the orphanage has cared for.
It was children like these in the streets of Guatemala that prompted Joanne Simpson of Sheffield, Vermont to team up with Carol Bishop.
In my heart, I just, oh man, there's got to be something that I can do to help, something.
An orphanage seemed to be the answer for the two women.
I decided that we would just pray and fast and see what the Lord's leading was. And the Lord definitely, clearly said, do it now.
They submitted the paperwork and became a nonprofit organization in November 2001 with a name based on inspiration.
I was thinking, and a name popped into my mind, and it was Shadow of His Wings.
With Guatemalan government approval, they started an orphanage in Guatemala City, but soon needed a larger site.
And we ended up finding what we needed. We have 15 acres here in Monjas. That's just a mile out of Monjas, so it's in the country. a perfect place for these kids to come.
The children started coming here in April 2006. Marina Reyes came to escape a difficult home life.
Era desordenada.
There was a disorder, it wasn't well.
Era muy pequeña, vivía con mi mamá y mis hermanas.
It was in a small place with my mother and brothers and sisters.
No teníamos un buen trato de mi madre.
We weren't treated right by my mom.
Reyes is now a 24-year-old nursing student working at the orphanage.
Porque a pesar de que no son mi familia de sangre,
Just to think about that, they're not my family, even though blood related.
ellos me han ayudado económicamente,
They've helped me economically,
espiritualmente
spiritually,
y siempre aconsejándome,
always giving me good advice.
empezando con Mamá Carol,
Starting off with Mama Carol,
Mamá Joan,
Mama Joanne,
Papá Gib
Papa Gibb, Father Gibb,
y las primeras parejas que estuvieron en él.
and the first couples that were here.
The organization hopes to change more young lives like Marina's. Future plans also include becoming self-sustainable by growing their own crops and utilizing livestock. Ultimately, they hope to open more homes and accept more children.
Jeremy, we're eating supper with poutine tonight.
Rebecca Reese, News 7, Monjas, Jalapa, Guatemala.
While Joanne Simpson of Sheffield has moved on, another local couple has actually moved to Guatemala to help the shadow of his wings continue to fly. Rebecca and Jessica's next video postcard from their busman's holiday will bring us their story.
For those of you who have been watching our last two broadcasts, you know Rebecca and I went to Guatemala for winter break last month, thanks to the financial generosity of the Lyndon United Methodist Church. The church sends a missionary team to work at an orphanage for a week every year.
The orphanage is part of the James Project of Latin America that began in 1999 by coordinating the distribution of food, clothing, and other items to widows and orphans in Guatemala. When the Lyndonville missionary team arrives at the Shadow of His Wings orphanage, they're welcomed by some former neighbors. Tonight, we introduce you to those neighbors in the third Busman's Holiday postcard from Central America.
Imagine picking up everything you own and moving to a different country. Stephen Beverly Hebert of Lyndonville did just that.
We came actually in a work team in 2007.
Stephen Herbert's first visit to the Shadow of His Wings orphanage in Monjas, Guatemala changed his life forever.
He came home and said, "Honey, God told me we're going to be living and moving to Guatemala." I thought, nice, okay.
But the actual transition wasn't that easy or quick. The Heberts had put down roots in Lyndonville.
Worked in the school system there for quite a while and helped with the program that they have to go to Burke Mountain and help the kids learn how to ski.
While Steve worked at the Fold. So the couple and their kids went on mission trips for the next few years and decided to take the plunge and work in Guatemala full-time in 2012.
We started our quest then to build the funds and supporters and so forth that we would need to come here full-time.
I wasn't sure how well I really wanted to be outside of the United States. I was comfortable in the United States. I knew how to live, how to function, how to do things, how things worked.
But the couple has made the transition. Steve works to keep the grounds at Shadow up and running, while Bev is head of the sponsorship program that raises money to underwrite orphanage operations.
It means a big deal, just because they haven't had a lot of that love, I think, in the past. And it gives them a new perspective on how someone can love them.
I mean, the Lord called us here because He wanted us to just be an example to the kids. And that's what we put as our primary focus.
5 years after taking the plunge, Mrs. Hebert has no regrets.
I could see without a doubt that this was the place that God wanted us to be.
And the couple said they plan to stay there until God tells them otherwise. Rebecca Reese, News 7, Monjas, Jalapa, Guatemala.
In our final video postcard, we will examine the impact overseas travel to places like Guatemala can have on travelers when they return home.
Author Terry Pratchett asks in his comic fantasy novel, A Hat Full of Sky, why do you go away? His answer, so that you can see the place you came from with new eyes and extra colors. Photographer Jessica Goldbrand and I traveled to Guatemala recently with members of the Lyndonville United Methodist Church on a busman's holiday and have found that to be true. Here's the final video postcard made at the Shadow of His Wings orphanage.
We accept children for 4 reasons. We accept them for abandonment, neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and trafficking.
Tiffany Applegate and her husband Brian run the orphanage and have to say no to some placements because their budget can't handle them all.
It's the hardest part of my job, but it's just not possible. We've had, calls for babies. Babies are really hard to say no to. Here recently we've had a lot of calls for teenagers and pregnant girls, as young as 11, 12 years old.
That overwhelming need is why the Applegates appreciate the annual visits by volunteers to work for a week at the orphanage.
I give my life to follow everything I believe in.
When people come here and they make an investment into Guatemala, they make an investment into the children of Guatemala, it does make a difference in their lives. But what we also want them to do is to take that back to where they live, because the reality is we have desperate hurting people here in Guatemala, but we know also there are desperate hurting people in Vermont. There are desperate hurting people all over the United States.
Desperate in similar ways, child abuse, neglect, and malnourishment are all problems in the Northeast Kingdom. The Applegates find that many volunteers return home with new eyes, and that is good for all Americans.
Find something bigger than yourself. Take your eyes off out of the mirror. Stop doing selfies and start focusing on others. And going to a third world country or a country in need and just serving for a while, it'll change your life.
The trip changed our lives. Jessica and I returned home, and we have decided to sponsor 2 of the children at the orphanage. Rebecca Reese, News 7, Monjas, Jalapa, Guatemala.
One final note for Mark Twain, who said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. News 7 News Director Tim Lewis says he would like to thank the Lyndonville United Methodist Church for giving 2 of his students the opportunity to travel to Guatemala and practice their craft during their winter break.